Hello and welcome to the Businesstalk podcast. I'm your host Deepak, joining you from India. It's an honor to welcome Dr. Carles Lalueza-Fox as our distinguished guest on today's episode of our podcast. Dr. Carles, born in Barcelona, is a distinguished Spanish biologist best known for his pioneering research in the field of ancient DNA. Holding a PhD in biology from the University of Barcelona, he has conducted research at both the University of Cambridge and the University of Oxford, as well as in the Icelandic genetics firm Core Genetics. Since 2008, he has been a research scientist at the Institute of Evolutionary Biology at Pompey Fabra University, where he continues to advance molecular approaches to understanding human origins. His scientific contribution spans the recovery of genetic material from ancient remains, the reconstruction of extinct species through phylogenetic, and the tracing of prehistoric human migrations. A leading expert in evolutionary genomics, he has played a central role in studies on Neanderthal genetics. In 2010, he participated in the landmark research led by Nobel laureate Svante Pääbo, published in Science, which conclusively demonstrated that Homo sapiens carry Neanderthal DNA, redefining the evolutionary link between ancient and modern humans. In 2014, he led the first sequencing of a European Mesolithic genome at the Institute of Evolutionary Biology in Barcelona. His team's findings revealed that early Europeans could have had dark skin combined with blue eyes, an unexpected genetic combination that reshaped our understanding of early human diversity. Dr. Carles Lalueza-Fox has been honored with several prestigious awards in recognition of his remarkable work and contributions. The list of these awards is provided in the YouTube description. In today's episode, Dr. Carles Lalueza-Fox shares key insights from his acclaimed book, Identity: What DNA Can Tell Us About Ourselves, exploring how genetics offer novel, fascinating, and objective perspectives on human identity at a time when the concept of identity has never been more significant. Let's not keep you waiting. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Carles Lalueza-Fox for the conversation. Dr. Carles, we are deeply honored by your presence and grateful for your time with us today.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Dr. Carles, you describe the aim of this book as clarifying what genomics can and cannot. Tell us about different levels of human identity. Could you walk us through those levels from the individual to the species and what DNA actually reveals at each stage?
Yes, I had the idea that our identity is a major concern across our lives, and not only at the beginning or when we are teenagers and we try to find our own personality, but also probably all across our life. And then there are some things of identity that clearly relates to the past. We have from the level of pure individuality, being human beings, but then we have a level of family. We have a level of extended family, a genealogy. We feel we belong to our ancestors to some extent. And then we have a level of population, let's say, or collective identity. This is very variable. It can be your neighborhood, it can be your nation, your city, whenever. Some of these levels of identity, because they are rooted in the past, they clearly could have, let's say, a genetic dimension. So what I wanted to explore in this book were these different levels of identity from genetics, what genetics could tell us and could not tell us about our identity at different levels. So I was not really interested in, there are many mechanisms of identity, like psychological identity, political, religious identity. That's okay, but I didn't want to explore these aspects. I was much more interested in what genetics can do, especially because in the last, say, 15 years or so, we are accumulating lots of data from ancient genomes all across the world, probably more in Europe and the Americas right now. But then we have the possibility of testing some of these ideas directly in space and time with people who lived in the past. So it's not only that we can feel attached to people who live in the past, but also we have these people already because we have retrieved around 13,000 ancient genomes already. So with this information is what I wanted to explain in this book.
Doctor, over the last decade, we have gone through from a handful of ancient genomes to more than 10,000 ancient human genomes. How has this explosion of data most radically changed the story we tell about who we are as a species?
Yeah, I mean, I would say the first step was in 2010, as you mentioned at the beginning, with the publication of the Neanderthal Genome Project, where we discovered all modern humans outside Africa, outside Sub-Saharan Africa. We carry about 2 to something percent of Neanderthal genome in our own genomes. This is not just an anecdote. I mean, it's a small but significant amount of genes that are introgressed in our genomes. But I say it's not anecdote, just an anecdotal because it changed the paradigm. In human evolution, 20 years ago, I would say that the consensus was that Neanderthals got extinct without interbreeding with modern humans, and now we know this was not the case. So, again, this is something related to our identity as a species because we no longer can see the Neanderthals as a completely independent branch. In fact, we carry some of their genes in our own genomes, and these genes are doing some functions. So that was the first, I would say, a step of ancient DNA providing a clue not only on human evolution, but a clue on identity. And this it has some implications for the definition of a species. Some people now consider modern humans and Neanderthals are the same species because the definition of a species, the biological definition is people who could interbreed. Some people consider them still different species. In fact, taxonomically, it's called Homo neanderthalensis, that could maybe meet and interbreed. But as I say, this is the first step of questioning our notions of identity in something that it seems very well established, like the definition of a species. And then from then on, more and more ancient human genomes have been accumulating because the techniques have improved. And also the prices of sequencing has gone cheaper and cheaper. And then we have start exploring, the Paleolithic modern humans, the Mesolithic modern humans, feral farmers. And then we are now working in Roman Empire and Great Migrations period, going to the Middle Ages. And again, this has an impact on notions of identity because we have discovered the differences we are now seeing, for instance, within Europe, North Europe, Eastern Europe, whenever, are due to just slight differences in proportions of different layers of ancestry. So there are no pure populations. There are no races, of course, but what it exists, in fact, is different layers of ancestry which are associated to different migrations that took place in the past, and slight differences in these proportions of ancestry is what creates the difference today. So, of course, it's very different to think that you belong to a specific population isolated to the rest, that you, in fact, are sharing the same layers of ancestry to the rest of the world. And this has, again, had an impact on our perceptions of identity, of course. And finally, I would say, but last but not least, we are now in a world where there are many ancestry companies, which is a very big business especially in the United States, where you pay a small amount of money, maybe $100, and you get your genome and the interpretation of your genomes in terms of ancestry, and also in terms of people around the world that share with you small amounts of chromosomes, so that they are your, let's say, distant family. And this it represents a revolution, in my view, not always very well explained to the customers. So, and there are other things also, like the possibility of building genealogies now that carry millions of people. This didn't exist because of the computational difficulties some years ago. So, the combination of all these techniques and this situation is what makes now so interesting to think about identity in a new light.
Doctor, in the book, you point out that human populations overlap enormously in genetic variants and that clear biological races do not exist. How do you explain this to someone who feels that genetics must somehow validate traditional racial categories?
Yeah, I mean, it's first of all, if we consider the genome is enormous. It's 3.2 gigabases. So the 3.2 nucleotides, which are the molecules that form the DNA. Um, but when we look at which positions are variable among modern humans, is a very small number of positions. That's because, in fact, we are a very species with a very low diversity as compared to other species. Of course, diversity is something that is not absolute, and you have to compare with some other organisms to know if you have a lot of diversity of not. But if we compare to other mammals or other primates, in fact, humans have a very, very low diversity. And that's because, we came probably from quite recent times, 300,000 years ago, maybe, with strong bottlenecks that make purge lots of diversity from our ancestors. And then when you look at this small number of variants in our genomes, what we found is that what is called common variants. Common variants are those that are found in more than 5%, let's say, of the individuals. We found these common variants are shared among many populations. And that explains, is a bit associated to what mentioned before. That explains the idea that all the populations are somehow related. Nevertheless, there are some genes that are structured geographically and that we perceive, common eye, let's say. And not only that, these genes which are structured mislead the Victorian, racial scientists, thinking the differences were very deep and very important, while in fact they correspond to a limited number of genes which are associated especially to pigmentation, let's face. And that reflects environmental adaptations occurring in different climates and different regions in the very last thousands of years, tens of thousands of years, but not really millions of years, involving thousands of genes. So this is a bit the contradiction of what is perceived and what is seen when you look at the genomes.
Dr. Carles, commercial as ancestry tests now give people labels like Southern European and Sub-Saharan African, and even hint at Viking and Yamana's roots. Why do people usually misunderstand about these categories, and how far should we go in treating them as part of our identity?
Yeah, that's it's not an easy. It's a problem that has no easy solution, because we as a population geneticist, we tend to work with populations, but we just don't know how to define these populations. If you look at the literature, you will find different labels. Some of them are political labels, I don't know, compare French against Spanish. Some of them are or tend to be geographical labels, the Mediterranean populations versus, I don't know, Central Asian. Of course, it's all misleading, but it does not have an easy solution. It's something that you need to work out depending on what you want to answer. It would be ideal if, I don't know, if modern humans were in isolated islands and you were comparing one island to the other, the limits of the population would be the limits of the island. But it's not the case. At least AncientDNA, I think it provides us with a solution. Is that we are comparing, let's say, 50 Roman skeletons found in that particular site and dated to the 3rd century, something like that. That's more real. You don't need to define a population. You can, of course, explain it that archaeological horizon is the Roman Empire, blah, blah. But you at least you are not dealing with the complications of defining a priori a population that doesn't exist. And we'll put another example, the why this is not easy to be solved. Whenever you define a population, you will find differences between two populations whatsoever you are comparing. So if I create, I don't know, Northern Germany versus I don't know, Southern Germany, I will find some differences. But this doesn't mean this country is divided into different groups. It's just, I created these labels and then I found difference. Always going to be, the differences are minor, of course, but because of the genetic information and the tools we have, always we are going to find some differences. So there is no easy way to define populations, but on the other hand, it's understandable that you need it's an operative concept, let's say.
Dr. Ancient DNA suggests that human history is a story of constant migration and mixing rather than isolated, pure population. How does this evidence challenging long-standing national or ethnic myths about continuity and origin?
Yes, and this also relates to my previous book, which was called Inequality, a Genetic History. One of the things the ancient DNA has uncovered is the prevalent pattern of migrations in the past, coming whenever area we look for. I have more knowledge on Europe, but it replicates in other continents. Until, let's say, 30 years ago, the prevalent view in archaeology was that changes in cultural, heritage were not related to people moving to the new areas, but ideas circulating. I think this, it derives from the consequences of the Second World War. There were these racial views of the Nazis and so on. So archaeologists tended to think ideas were moving and not people. What we found in ancient DNA in the last 15 years is any different archaeological horizon we explore, it means people coming from abroad. And not only in modern period when we have historical information like the great migrations after the fall of the Roman Empire with, Longobards, Anglo-Saxons, Visigoths, Goths, and Slavs, Vikings moving around. But also in the Upper Paleolithic, for instance, where we have different archaeological horizons, Gravettian, Magdalenian, Solutrian, etc. Every time we analyze skeletons from these particular archaeological horizons, we found ancestries which are different to the previous one. And then what happens? it almost never happens that the new ancestry deletes the previous one. It just becomes overimposed. Sometimes, of course, what happens with the previous one, it decreases. But this implies not only migration of people, but mixing with local people. And this pattern is prevalent. What we found is a long history of migration, a long history of admixing, and also, I would say, a long history of inequality, because some of these migrations represented people who had some kind of a technological advantage, new weapons, horses, Bronze Age swords, that could really impose over the previous, genetic substratum. So yeah, that's the scenario. Prevalent pattern of migrations, prevalent pattern of admixing, sometimes very biased. And a long history, I would say, in many ways, a long history of suffering, probably.
Dr. Carles, as genomics becomes a powerful social transformation tool in the 21st century, what are the most pressing ethical risks you see, especially about nationalism, discrimination, or the politicization of genetic identity?
Yeah, that's an obvious risk. I would say that what have we seen of the 21st century, which it looks kind of interesting. I would say is a deglobalization and emergence of kind of a regional powers like Europe, North America, China, probably India, and less connected, at least in trade. And that means also there is the emergence of nationalistic identities, and some of them they can have the idea of picking up genetic information to support their goals. Um, I have the opposite view. I think that the genetic information can be a force of democratization of the present society, because the messages, as I mentioned so far, I think they are quite positive. They're messages of interconnections. We are all related. We have been admixing for hundreds of thousands of years. But there is the temptation of how do you use this, and I cannot be really confident that the genetic information is well explained. And this also relates a bit to the ancestry companies I mentioned before, where the people search for their true identities. They think their true identities are going to be in their genomes. And sometimes when they deliver the information it can be misleading. They can tell you are, I don't know, 20% Viking or something like that, which is, of course, wrong from a scientific point of view. But imagine that you get this information. What will you change your perception of your own identity? So we are in a moment where I can see different forces acting upon identity from genetics. I tend to think that some of them are positive, but also some of them can be problematic, let's say.
Dr. Identity politics is often driven by culture, history, and lived experience, whereas genetics is a cold statistical science. Where do you think genomics should stop, the point beyond which using DNA to define identity becomes dangerous or misleading?
Yes, yeah. I mean, going to the same thing. I mean, there are many mechanisms of collective identity that have been used. Just imagine, for instance, I am in Barcelona, where we have a very powerful football team, the Barcelona football team, which is famous all around the world. you belong to the collective supporters of the Barcelona, to the Barça. You don't need to be born in Barcelona. In fact, you can be a supporter of the Barça from India. You just need to go to watch the match and support the team. So that's the mechanism where you don't need genetics by anything. And all the football clubs and all the things are aware of that and create this sense of belonging. You are one of us if you support our team. But of course, in politics, um, there are some things that goes to the heritage, to the common heritage, and not only the cultural one, which is very clear. You speak my own language. You are one of us. For instance, let me remind you the war between Russia and Ukraine. Uh, um, the president of Russia invoke a common Slavic heritage to say Ukraine was part of the Slav world along, Belarus and so on, along Serbians and, which are considered the Southern Slavs. So this is not just people speaking in Slavic languages, but people that have, according to them, a common heritage. So then it becomes dangerous because you go into genetics and you pick up what you want from genetics to support, in this case, a war. No, it's not even an election in a country or a political party. It's entirely a war. So yeah, there are many things to consider. It's a very complex issue, really, where if you think on that, there are many different factors trying to be bound together. Not only scientific factors, which is the one what I explore in the book, but also political, social, cultural, etc. factors. In a very complex way.
Dr. Carlos, if every listener could see their full genomic history, millions of variants, dozens of ancestral contributions across continents and millennia, what single lesson about identity would you most want them to take away from that picture?
I would say one of the positive messages, as I mentioned, is that we are all interconnected. We all share genetic variants. In continental areas, we share the same layers of ancestry, as I mentioned. So it means, I think it's a positive thing. It means we are all a very large family. If we could, in fact, have many more genomes, at the end we will find our ancestors scattered around the world in very few thousands of years. We will be connected. Everyone, you and me, are connected. We just don't have the information, but for sure we are connected. It could be connected just 20,000 years ago, or maybe less. It could be just few thousands of years. And I think this is a positive message from genetics. All this can be modeled genetically. Even if we don't have the genomes from the people who, start our species some hundreds of thousands of years ago, but we can model them. So as we have global challenges like climate change, I think a positive message is that despite our, superficial differences, we are all belong to a common humankind, because in fact we are all interconnected. And then we should be able to face these challenges, which are in fact planetary challenges, and survive as a civilization. So I prefer always to take the positive message instead of the negative one because you know, it's cheaper.
Dr. Carlos, I would like to conclude this episode with one last question. Looking ahead, with computational tools now able to reconstruct pedigrees spanning millions of people and many generations, what new questions about human identity excite you the most? and which ones keep you awake at night?
Well, one of the things that is interesting is now we are modeling ancestries and so on. As you mentioned, genealogists are able to work with an enormous amount of data that were, impossible to manage informatically just some years ago. Genetically, very soon it will be possible to link living people with people from the past beyond any possible family record. That's because there are some fragments of chromosomes that are identical because of common descent, which means that you can track them and you can link it to people nowadays. So you will very soon, when we had genomes from the last hundreds of years, we will be able to have a look at our direct ancestors that were living, I don't know, maybe in the same country, maybe in another one, 400 years ago. And this will create, I think, even a stronger feeling of network. We'll be able to think that we are connected to people who lived and survived and had descendants and had children and survived epidemics and wars and disasters to be, at least these fragments of genomes present nowadays. And I think that's going to be an exciting development of ancient DNA in the next decades. And as I say, this will create again a positive feedback on our common links as populations, as humans, and as a species.
Dr. Carlos, thank you for sharing your time, your expertise, and your remarkable insights into how DNA reshapes our understanding of identity at every level, from the personal to the planetary. Your work illuminates not just where we come from, but how deeply interconnected our stories truly are. It has been an absolute pleasure to host you on the podcast today, and this conversation will surely stay away with our listeners as they reflect on who they are and how genetics can both inform and enrich that sense of self. Thank you once again.
No, thanks to you for your very interesting talk, and it has been a pleasure.
Thank you.